Welcome to Design Build Central, a podcast for design build remodelers by design build remodelers. Thanks for joining us today, whether you're listening online or you're watching us online, right?
You can do both.
Online.
How about that?
Is there an AI part to this too?
Not yet. That's coming soon.
Okay, that might be a behind a paywall or something. I don't know. We got to make big money.
You have to be a Patreon subscriber.
I like it. I'm Bruce Case.
I would be Bill.
Hello, Bill. And also, if you have...
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's like a joint thing here. Someday I'm going to get a little red mug like he's got too, instead of this huge green.
Now see,
beastly.
the people listening don't know that.
Don't know what?
That you have a green thing.
Yes, they do. They can see. Oh, the people listening. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't catch that. I have a green, huge water bottle that I carry around, but it's who I am. It's what I use. I don't know. If you have feedback, let us know. Or if you have questions,
We've been through this before. Yes. Only positive feedback.
Yes, I didn't say that. That's true.
Remodelers, we're not podcasters.
Yes.
We understand that we're not very good at this.
Yes, that's a given. That's a given. We just want a little oomph to just do another episode or two. A little reinforce. Right. It's at dbcentral at casedesign.com. That's dbcentral at casedesign.com. Interesting topic, I think, today.
I think so, too.
Yeah, Bill and I were talking. We usually talk about a week before just to kind of brainstorm what might be a good topic. And we thought about a lot of remodelers ask us, or when we bump into other people, we've been around for a long time, since 1961. Had a good run. We've certainly had some tough years. We've had some good years. It's cyclical. It's just, that's the reality of it. So everything's not perfect. But what are some of the things that have been foundational to that longer term? I don't want to say success, because to me it's not all been perfect.
No.
I don't, what's a good
what's
word?
Contributed to our
not dying and going bankrupt? Tenure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I like that.
Because I think that's right, that there are some things that influence that. I've got a list.
I do too. And yours is on a computer. And for those listening on the radio, Bill's got a beautiful iPad. I've got a scratchy piece of paper. But that's, again, personality. Do you want to go how do you want to do this?
I don't know. You want to go back and forth?
I like that. We did that.
Okay.
We did that on another podcast. We did not, just so everybody knows, we did not compare notes before this. We did talk about the topic, but we coincidentally both came up with a list. So you get to go first.
All right. I'm going to go first. And this is, I want to say it's in no particular order. But maybe when we're done, we could talk a little more about that, because we were talking about this before. I don't know that it's in an order, but there are things that contribute that have to be sort of at the base.
Almost like a pyramid or something.
Yeah, and they build on each other.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of intrigued by that. But again, so in no particular order.
Thank you, because an order's hard.
In order, that's why I didn't do it that way. But one of the things that I think we learned from being not very good franchisors was that business acumen was critical to the long-term success of the business. Meaning, you could be genius at design or project management or the sticks and bricks of being able to build it. That was not the best indicator of whether your business would survive and thrive. It was the people that were good at the business side of it that did well.
Yeah,
I think.
No, that's good. That's an interesting. So when we did a list thing like this a podcast or two ago, and we had I think it was the same.
Yeah. Very similar.
Maybe a couple differences on the ranking, but the same. That one I did not have. Which is interesting, and I think that's a really good one, because you're right. You could be good at anyone can be good at let me start again. One can be good at a specific thing, but that doesn't mean you're going to sustain.
And most people do not enter the remodeling business because they love the business of it. Right. They love the remodeling of it.
Right. That's excellent. Boy, I've got this list in front of me. Again, no particular order.
Nope.
I could go a lot of different ways, but I'm going to say investing cash back into the business, investing back into the business in general, but cash is kind of the king of that in a sense. So that, early on, certainly most remodelers, certainly my dad, when he started the business, it's just kind of a little bit of starvation and just do whatever you can to make the next payroll. And that's just reality. But then if you can get past that phase, then it's okay. We've got a little money in the bank. what do you do with the money? Do you go on vacations and buy things and buy new doodads and all that? Or do you reinvest at least some of it back into the business? And that could be new positions. It could be technology. It could be, marketing to try to grow your business,
Right.
and things like that. And I think my dad, I give him really the credit
absolutely.
for this, but over the years he did really reinvest. He did not take, once he got to a certain level, he didn't really take that much money out of the bank, to be honest.
Right.
And it really has allowed us to innovate, to invest, but also to run our business in the way that we think is the right way to run it. Right. If a client's got a challenge and we should have done it right, and it's 10 years after the project's done, we're going to fix it because we have the ability to do that. We're able to make decisions for the best of the business and the team.
I mean, another thing that was, I think, fabulous about Fred was the timing of that investment also. And my recollection is I joined Case in January of 1990, and early 90s were not the best of time.
Good point.
Fred kept investing in the business, and he saw it truly as an investment. He wasn't carrying the business. He was trying to build infrastructure so that when things got better, we were in a position to take advantage of that in a way that other local firms were not.
Yep.
And I think that's when we put distance between, who were our competitors at that time.
Right.
And I really credit Fred for that just vision and ability to do that and desire to do that as well, is invest in the business.
That's a great point. I mean, one of those things in the early 90s, as an example, in addition to marketing or team or positions, was also the handyman division. That's when we started. We was like, what can we do? Maybe we can do smaller projects. And that's been a key part of our business now.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
Okay. Is that it then? We're done? Now
I got 10, man.
I got 8. Okay.
I got 10.
I couldn't get to 10, but anyways, go ahead.
Well, maybe some of mine overlap a little bit. So my next one would be that it's not built on an individual, that there are processes and systems involved that allow the business to grow and thrive and not be dependent on an individual or individuals, so that if something were to happen, that the business survives. And I think since we're talking longevity, that's a critical component to it.
Amen. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about team in a minute. I'm not going to lump that in the same, but I'm with you 100%. The other thing, and stop me if you have this as a separate item or if you sort of a subset of the process point you just brought up. I know you're as passionate as anybody on the planet about our design build process, specifically, our retainers and 3-step process. Is that, do you have a separate line item for that? Or
no.
I think that's key too, right? In addition to having a process, that specific process, I think, has been critical.
Most definitely. But I guess I'm seeing that more as unique to us in fair. Our history, where somebody else may have a different process and system that's custom tailored to their business.
Right.
But you gotta have a process and a system.
Right.
Is the critical thing.
Right.
I happen to like ours the best.
No bias, right?
A little biased.
Okay. Another one I used the word humble. I was thinking about the word adapt. I was thinking about, but I feel like a lot of it comes from a humble place. John Murphy, who runs a great remodeling company in St. Paul, Minnesota, recommended a book to me a while ago that said, think big, act small. And it was about think big. You want to think big, you want to think strategically, you want to think, but act small. We don't have all the answers. We know that. We don't, we think we're good. Yes. But let's have some humble pie a little bit too.
We can always be better.
Yeah, like even what you said a second ago, Bill, the words you use, we weren't that good as a franchisor. I mean, there's a humble side to that, to say we weren't that, to admit it. Like we tried it, we busted our butt, we gave it our all. I hope people know that, but the reality is we just weren't that good at it. Let's be humble enough to admit it, or let's be humble enough to admit that we don't have all the answers. So when it comes to AI, we're trying to figure it out like a lot of listeners are, right? Or other things like that. And I at least put that on the list because I look at like sports teams, and they win the Super Bowl or whatever sport it is, or the Roman Empire, and you read about them, and that you start to think your what doesn't stink, and to me that's the beginning of the end. So remaining sort of humble, hungry. But.
All right, let's see. Where am I going to go next? So many things. I'm going to go a little bit generic, and that would be opportunity. And I guess that comes with growth.
Yeah.
But I have a couple coming up that maybe deal with this as well. But that people stick, which is critical, I think, to longevity in business. If there is hope, doesn't necessarily even have to be realized, I don't think, but there's got to be like, potentially downstream, I could be this or I could be that, and I don't have to go somewhere else to scratch that itch.
Right.
You know, that possibility exists, and I think that contributes to a business having, you know, the longevity of that business.
Yep. Totally agree. I think that's a great, I mean, I had team, but I'm going to lump that under what you just said, because you're right.
Yep.
I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we have to have a great team. It's not easy to say. It's easy to say, hard to do.
Yeah.
We're only as good as our team and all those kind of things. And I know we believe that firmly, but the reality is, how do you retain those people for a long period of time? And you're right. I think that's critical when you look at the tenure of our team members and all of that. One I had may go under that, but I investment in a leadership team. And I remember my dad, for years before I was involved with the business, kept saying, we need to get to 10. He, would come home and say, we need to get to 10 million. We need to get to 10 million. And as a kid, I'd be like, why? What's the, I always thought it was sort of an ego thing, like 10 million. No, it was because he said that's when I can sustain a leadership team. Like at the time it was 3 people. So that, number one, he wasn't quite as on the firing line of every day, and because this business is, we all know, is a day-to-day in and out, have to resell your business every day business. But also, to your point about growth for team members and opportunity, it would give those people who were performing and proved themselves and culturally fit an opportunity for growth. And then it allowed for it relates back to longevity and tenure of the business, because then that leadership team can help carry the culture, the performance, the sort of the DNA of the business. Even with my dad's passing, I feel like we've still got that, in my opinion. And so that investment in a leadership team, I think, is critical, not only to pay the people, but also we meet all the time, talk about it. Look, I don't know about you, I look at it, it's sort of like our internal board of directors kind of thing. Like, and let's talk about issues. So.
Different perspective on something. People have different experiences that they bring to that situation, whatever it might be. So you just kind of, I'm crossing leadership. I'm down to 9 now, because that was.
I've only hit 1 on your list.
That's so far. That's my list.
Okay,
but you kind of hit the other one, this next one too, and I think that. Again, I'm trying to think of this as like build on. And with opportunities and people sticking comes tenure and institutional knowledge. And I think that is really, really important, because there are people here that have been here for, 5, 6, 7 years that didn't know Fred.
Right.
But there's enough of us that did, we can bring that to them and continue that chain of, this is how we do things, this is why we do it that way, this is foundational to who we are as a business. And if you didn't have people that spanned longer periods of time because you didn't offer opportunities, or you didn't see them as your most valuable assets, or whatever terminology you want to use, that you're not just not going to have that, and that's going to contribute to a business that's going to have gaps. And anytime there's a gap, there's a chance for crud to accumulate in that gap. And I would prefer to be
no crud
free.
Again, sports teams, I see that the ones I think that are success have a mix. You don't. I don't want to say you don't want to have all long-term tenured people. That's a little harsh, but I think there's, some challenges there too, but you need to have that tenure. And also I think it shows new people like, wow, I can build a career, a future here. I'm totally with you on that. Let's see. This relates back. You mentioned you started one of your first one. I think it was your first one, Bill, was franchisors. You mentioned we weren't good at that. Stick to what you're good at. We've tried a lot of things over the years, and that sort of adage of fail quickly. There's another part to that saying, right? That's the part I remember, but fail quickly. But throwing, like, we've tried window kind of replacement work. We've tried insurance work. We tried franchising. I'm sure I'm forgetting.
We were doing some plumbing stuff, some electrical stuff, those types of things. Before Handyman got off the ground, it was even like simply remodeling and refined that concept from there. So we've swung the bat and missed once or twice.
And I think we're at a point now, and I say that, I'm sure we'll swing and miss again. It's coming up. But, well, first of all, I think it's good to keep swinging.
Absolutely.
At some level. But we've, I think, learned that just be careful you don't wreck your entire business or self in the swing. Give it a shot, but fail quickly. But also recognize what you're good at. I think we've recognized we're good at multidisciplinary projects that aren't just one window replacement in general. Not that we won't do a window replacement, but build a business around that. There's other people that are better, faster, stronger at that. We're really good at those kind of things. Franchising, we thought because we're good at remodeling, design, build, remodeling, we'd be good at franchising. Right. Learn that's a whole franchising's its own industry, its own business. So
yeah, most definitely. That might be an interesting topic for a future discussion. And that would be a swing where we hit it into foul territory, maybe. And that is multiple offices.
Yeah.
And how the thinking has evolved over the course of time for anybody out there that's considering like, oh, I've got my little service area down. I'm doing well there, but there's a town not that far away, and wonder if I planted the flag over there, are there opportunities?
That's a great idea.
And we've fallen off that bike as well.
We've pretty much fallen off every bike, haven't we?
Yeah, maybe so. Okay, I'm going to go with, what am I going to go with next? I'm going to go with succession. That there should be, needs to be, ought to be a plan for what's next. And that is getting people or the business in a position for transitions, whatever those might be. And because they're going to come, sometimes planned, sometimes unexpected, right? And that there really ought to be some thoughts for a plan B in order for, again, we're not talking about a business that's going to last 10 years. We're looking for businesses that last 50, 75, 100 years. No matter what, no matter how fabulous it is, there are going to be people moving in and out of that timeline. And I think a critical part of why we've been successful is we've had people that were able to grow when presented with an opportunity to do other things and maintain or succeed, thrive in pushing the business forward. So,
and I think you'd agree internally. I think is primarily or pretty much solely what I'm thinking. Not that we'll never hire from outside, but then they bring, like you said earlier, they bring that culture, that institutional knowledge. So this one isn't as deep as some of the ones we've talked about, but I do think I have it on my list, and I think it's important, is consistent marketing and branding. And when I say consistent, you and I know our logo has evolved some over the years. Frankly, we started as Case Construction Company back in 61, and then it changed probably in the early 80s.
Square.
Yeah, exactly, because we were more construction, and then it was design build. So that's changed. But what I mean more is that, and I know you know this, but that investment in marketing and branding, that consistent being out there in the marketplace, because we know, you put an ad in a magazine, a newspaper, a radio, whatever, and people aren't just going to see the ad and say, oh, we should redo our kitchen. It takes time and years of building that up. And I've seen other businesses that don't stay consistent with it. Things get really busy and they say, I'm going to cut that expense. I won't market, but then all of a sudden it takes so long to ramp it up. An analogy I make is like farming, not that I'm a farmer, but you got to plant seeds way ahead of time.
Right.
And, so I think that's been something that kind of relates back to investing back into the business that I mentioned earlier, that it costs money and it takes effort, but I think that's been critical.
And no, I think that's a great point. And back to the timing thing, like, early 90s, not the best of times, maybe didn't have a lot of money to invest back in the business, but found a way to make that a priority and continue to do that. And then something that we got a little bit of flack for, and that was through COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Continuing to prioritize that investment. It's like we can't service what we have. Why on earth are we advertising? Shouldn't we save that money or whatever? It's not going to last forever, and people are only going to remember back so far, and objects in motion, right? That if you stop, it's really hard to get it going again.
Yeah.
And, you come off that post-COVID high and all of a sudden you're looking around and like, we got a little bit of extra capacity because now we can breathe. We needed to continue that investment. During even the best of times.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people did not.
Right. Agreed.
It contributes to a business surviving and thriving longer term.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it my turn?
I think it is. You were sort of stalling like it was my turn, but no, that was mine.
All right. Yeah, it was you. I'm going to go, maybe this is a little bit oddball because I started with this sort of business acumen. But I've got passion for remodeling on my list.
Yeah.
And that is, if you are a business person and you are just looking for a business to make money with, I don't think that's a long-term play. You may be able to, in the short term, and cash out some way or whatever. But if you want to build a generational business, I think you really have to have kind of a passion for this stuff. And that critical to know how to run a business, to understand all of that. But you also got to just like tearing people's houses apart, putting them back together and seeing the joy that brings to people and the impact on people's lives and all of that sort of stuff. Yep. I just think that contributes to a business that lasts a long time.
It sounds obvious in a way, but you're right. I think there's some people in the industry we know that are more focused on the business side and don't really, they could be selling Xerox copiers, whatever makes sense, which is fine. But like you said, is that going to be long-term? And as we know, this is again, got to resell the business every week, every day. You got a production, we all know, keeps coming and coming and coming. And one I had that probably is sort of analogous, that it might sound too obvious, but I do think, at least for us, it's been important, is constantly thinking about what's best for the client. My wife and I were in a restaurant the other day, and it was an Italian restaurant, and they were playing some kind of like pop music really loud in the restaurant. And it was, decent. It wasn't Taj Mahal, fancy restaurant, but it was like in a nice Italian restaurant. It's like you expect maybe if you want to play music, play some Italian. Yeah. And I was talking to her, and she said, they're not playing it for us. They're playing it for themselves. And I took her as being correct. And I'm like, I wonder how many businesses, I know it sounds obvious, but like, think about it that way. So you think about design build. We did that years ago. My dad, to really what's best for the client. We thought it was best, in our opinion, to have it all under one house. Some other things I wrote down here: our warranty. We have a 5-year warranty. Our process. We talked about having a process. Sure, it needs to work for us internally, but it's got to make sense and be logical and work for the homeowner first and foremost, in my opinion. So to be, longevity with the business, I think constantly thinking about what's best for the client. There's seldom that we think, we can't do something we think's important for the client because it costs too much. Or I don't remember us having ever having a discussion like that. No. I mean, we're not going to build a free edition for them, but when it comes to
the normal stuff,
it's always like, we need to add a cabinet review because we keep screwing up cabinets, and that's not a good client experience. And we're constantly
inventing little things like that. It consistent with I had sort of making the care of clients a priority, just respect for that's a very similar sort of, they're the ones that write the checks that pay for everything to continue to happen. So if you lose sight of that, they're not the enemy. They're just not.
Exactly.
They're just not. I had just generically culture on the list too, and that is paying attention to that. And I think it builds camaraderie, it builds team, people that like working with one another are more likely to continue working with one another. I think it's a reflection of brand. It's so many things. We're lucky to have like an Allison that spends a lot of time thinking about these things, creating events. We try and, just nurture that culture. It gets harder and harder to do as people are here, there, and everywhere in a couple different office situations, and being able to work remotely or land at a Starbucks in between meetings so you don't have to come back to an office. And,
right.
I think it's harder and harder and harder to do, but I think it's a critical component of a business that lasts for a long time.
Right. And in my opinion, can be hard to focus on at the very beginning of a business or early stages, because it's like, I'm just trying to pay the bills here. I'm trying to, but then once you get to a certain level of stability.
Back to that sort of thought that, this builds on this, builds on this, builds on this.
Right.
And you can't really focus on culture your second year.
Right.
Like you said, you're just trying to keep your head above water and survive and do whatever you can.
I'm out, Bill.
Yeah.
My list is out. You must have more, though.
I think I'm about out because we've covered a lot of it. And I think maybe you had mentioned this, is just people, the quality of the team, the attitude of the team, that we don't, back to your humble sort of comment, that we don't know everything, that we got to be open to learning. We've got to be intellectually curious. That, I'm just talking to a guy today, and it evolves into a building science sort of conversation, because I love remodeling and you get geeky about it, but it is getting so freaking complicated to understand dew points in walls or assemblies or whatever it might be. But, there we are. That's what we do. Right. So we've got to adjust, adapt, to learn, be open to all of those things. So, I think that's pretty much covered my list of stuff.
I want to see how you're going to lead us down the road of layering this. You mentioned earlier, it's a lot to digest.
It is. But, I was thinking, okay, I started with business acumen. So you've got to have at least some sort of vision for what you'd like this business to be, and understand the path you've got to take to get there. So if you do that, that might lead to systems and processes. And, you're going to be the only person listed for every step in that. But you're starting maybe to figure that stuff out. And that as the business hopefully is successful, maybe there's opportunity for somebody else's name to take care of that instead of the business owners. Mm-hmm. So then that opportunity might lead to somebody saying, hey, maybe I could take that role and that role downstream. So that builds to tenure and institutional knowledge as you get exposed maybe to more pieces and parts of the business. And that as you do that and more people are around for longer periods of time, I think you're going to start to see culture gel, that this is the way we do it here. This is why we do it this way. I think as that continues to happen, again, Fred's $10 million mark, that may lead to being able to invest in leadership team as opposed to maybe an individual that's responsible for all of those sorts of things. When that happens, again, if you are a business that has a desire to be generational, then I think that's going to lead to, okay, I need to think about my son's going to be in this business one day. I need to make sure
also the leadership
he has, but these pieces and parts are in place to do all that sort of stuff. And then people, passion for remodeling and just general respect for clients and team come along with all that sort of stuff. But that's the way I was kind of seeing
just threw that off the side. You just kind of came up with that just now. That was like a drop the mic moment. I mean, that was strong.
It's what we do, man.
That was strong.
Spotlight's on. Dance, son of a gun. Dance. That's what we do.
One thing I'd say too, and I assume you'd agree, but tell me if you disagree, is you started with business acumen.
Yes.
Which I agree. You and I know a lot of folks started in this business without, and I say this respectfully, without like an academic business acumen.
I would say 98.5%.
Exactly. It's a love for the sawdust or love for design or whatever it is. And to me, it's more like, hey, if you want your business to sustain long term, you can learn that. I mean, this isn't a born thing, you can learn. It's just a matter of investing some time into that, taking some courses, whatever you want to do, somehow learning some of the business. Is that your take?
Totally agree with that. And it may be that you're interests, passion, desires evolve over that time too, where it may be sticks and bricks at the beginning, but then it's like, this business stuff kind of interesting. The strategy behind this, what do I do here? I remember being a young designer and I went through a little bit of that evolution, and that was, I like to design, I like to draw, that. But at some point, it's like, no, what I want to do is help the client figure out this riddle of how do I spend the right amount of money, and I can't be too invasive. And then that's project development. That's not design. Right. And then, at some point you evolve to like, oh, this is fun. And it's really a passion of mine, but it's kind of cool to be able to help other people see success too. And, you evolve and change. So I've kind of gone through that. I know you have.
Sure.
A billion different hats.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think to your point, you can start anywhere. Mm-hmm. It's just you need to acquire those skills,
or pay somebody if you really just don't want to deal with the business side.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've got to invest in that. So No, that was excellent, Bill. Really good list. Yeah.
You too.
That was fun. Yeah, but the way you pulled it together.
It's a little bit of a nerdy conversation, maybe, but
it's also fun. We don't compare notes ahead. I like that. Yeah. Because they're fairly similar, and there were a couple that I didn't have in here. I didn't have business acumen. That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to close up, right? Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. dbcentral@casedesign.com. If you have comments, thoughts, suggestions for topics, thank you.
And if that multiple office idea is
I like that.
Of any interest to anybody out there.
Yeah. Let us know. We're design studios too.
Or we're just going to have to make something else up.
Exactly.
So, might as well guide us.
I like that. How to cook quiche.
All right. I'm not going to be very helpful.
Thanks, everybody.
You got that one. See ya.